Good afternoon, folks, or good morning. Thanks for joining today's webinar. Welcome if you're watching on YouTube and also on Facebook, and to those of you who are inside the webinar room itself. So today we're going to be discussing, well, actually not just today, over the next few weeks we're going to be discussing efficiency. So that's efficiency across the whole A to B workflow. So today is about importing. Next webinar, can't remember when it is, sorry, is going to be about editing, and then we talk about exporting. We did consider trying to do this all in one hit in one webinar, but kind of came to the conclusion that would probably be a bit lengthy and a bit too much for everyone's attention spans. And of course, it means if you're pretty happy with your current workflow for either of those points, then you can skip that. So before we get into Capture One itself, for those of you on YouTube and Facebook, do feel free to pop your comments in the chat, and they will come straight through to me, and try and keep your questions on today's subject. That always helps, not just for my benefit, but for people listening as well. If you're in the webinar room itself and you want to ask a question, try to keep that into the Q&A tab. Just means it's easier to separate it out from the chat, which you can of course use as well, but not for asking questions to me at least. And if you would like to hide the chat, and just listen and learn, then you can do so. Just click that little downward arrow, and that will hide the chat and give you a little bit more space. So what do we plan to do today? So this section is about importing, as I said. So trying to do as much as possible in the import dialog, or at least trying to accomplish many tasks at the same time. So you're not having to do things repetitively or going through more steps than you absolutely need to. So we're going to make a little metadata template, which you can use either going forward or actually in your current catalog. We're going to show a brief bit about user collections just to make sure you're aware that you can import directly to a user collection. And we're going to talk about some culling that you can do during import, which is a little known feature which seems to get missed by a lot of people, and a few other stuff to do with naming. And if we get time, we'll look at a few bonus things that also came up this morning as well. So before we get to importing, we are going to build ourselves a couple of things: the metadata template, as I spoke about, and also prepare ourselves a user collection as well. So let's do the metadata template first. So the plan is, now you can't build a metadata template without actually having an image up on screen. So we're going to import into a brand new empty catalog when we get to that point, but I just need one image up on screen so I can go ahead and build our metadata template. Now these shots are from one of our ambassadors, Eric Ronald, so I'm going to base this webinar essentially on his work. So thanks to Eric for picture supply as always. So in our, do I have my mouse locator running? Yes. So in our final tool tab, we've got our metadata tool here, and essentially what we want to do is first of all reset this to the default, which is essentially what Eric had put in, which is just his name, like so. What we're going to do is build a bigger metadata template which you can use on all your images that you're going to import, and of course anything you have existing, which we'll talk about too. So let's just fill out some of those fields. So we've got Eric as our photographer, creator's job title, well, he is a photographer. Help see if I can spell it. His address, we don't want to reveal where Eric lives, so he's living at 321 Any Street, like so. The city, he is in, where is he? I think he's in Brisbane. Don't quote me on that, but he's somewhere in Australia. Brisbane is in Queensland. And postal code, I don't know. And country, he is in Australia, like so. We don't know his number, so we're going to put something fake in, and we're going to put Eric at eric.com. And his website, www, too many W's, ericronald.com, like so. Now, of course, you can be as brief or as detailed as you wish, but basically this metadata is something that you're going to be happy that is embedded into all your pictures. Now, don't worry too much if you're thinking, well, actually, I don't want all that data to be in my pictures, because when I export them, I perhaps like to hide a few things. Don't worry, because when you come to the export process, when we talk about that in future webinar, you can control exactly what metadata goes in the export. So the goal is here is just to put as much in it as possible. No danger there. And then the only other thing we're going to do is our copyright notice, like so. So now we need to save this as a preset. So up here in our hamburger menu, as it's called, we're going to say Save Custom Preset, and we're going to call this, well, first of all, we need to tell Capture One what's in our preset. Now, the danger is to say, well, let's just include everything, but we don't want to do that because we don't want to have rating and a color tag as part of that preset, because if you apply it to a photo that's already in your, back catalog of pictures, or perhaps you've already done some culling and rating elsewhere, or like on Capture One for iPad in the future, you don't want to obliterate any star rating or color tags that you've done. So we only want to tick on the stuff that we filled in. So we did creator, job title, address, city, state, postal code, country, phone number, email and website. And if we scroll down a bit, we will find our copyright notice. So that means if I had another preset which had perhaps some IPTC content, they're not going to overlap each other or wipe one out and so on. Mark, I've got no idea. He says, what does IPTC stand for? International Press something something. So it's just a standard that applications can adhere to. So you can Google it, I'm sure you'll find it. But it is essentially like ISO, those kinds of things. It's a standard that we can all adhere to. So we're not making up our own stuff. So now we're going to save that. And we're going to call this Eric Basic Metadata, like so. Don't change where you save it. It goes to the location where Capture One knows where to find it. So we don't want to put it anywhere else. So we can ignore that and just simply say save. So now we've got our preset nicely set up. Now, as I said, we need an actual image in Capture One to be able to set up that preset. For this purpose, as we've already got some of the pictures that I'm going to import, let's just close this catalog down. And we're going to make a brand new catalog right here under File. And we're going to call this Webinar Import PM. And say OK. So now we've got a brand new empty catalog. Now, before we get excited and start importing, there's one other thing that I want to do, is to build a user collection. So a user collection is a virtual collection that exists only inside Capture One. It's a great way to gather collections of pictures together without actually moving them from the location that they're stored in. So if you've got pictures stored on your internal hard drive or your external hard drive, but you want to build different collections like my best pictures, stuff I want to print, a particular location, then user collections are great for that. So I'm just going to make one here, an album, and we're going to call that Eric's. Well, actually, whose wedding is this? So the pictures we've got are from Jesse and Cav wedding, like so. So we're going to make that collection and I'm going to select it. And there's an important reason why I'm selecting it. So we've built our metadata preset, we've made a collection, we've got that collection selected. Now we're ready to import. Now there's lots of stuff we're going to do today, which you think, my God, you've gone through a lot of steps. But the idea is that you only need to do a lot of this stuff once. And then by saving presets and so on, you are set up, right? So it might seem like a lot of steps, but the next time you come to do it, it's going to be super fast. Question from Canadian Cat. Thank you, Canadian Cat. The International Press Telecommunications Council. There we go. What are the smart albums? We'll come to them actually, Daniela. So a smart album populates itself based on criteria you set for it. And I'm sure there'll be a little bit of time to look at filtering, so we will come back to that. Does the metadata preset work on sessions as well? Absolutely. I'm just using a catalog for no other reason than I'm using one, but the operation is really no different what you're going to see today, whether you're on catalogs or sessions. So no difference there. Question from Jeff, who asked the same thing. Same process for catalog or session? Yep. No problem at all. Okay. So, all right. Now we need to import some pictures. Now I'm going to import from memory card. The same thing that you're going to see applies if you're importing from an existing location. The only thing I would say, the benefit of showing you from a memory card is that, of course, you don't want to leave your pictures on a memory card. You want to get them somewhere safe, and you probably want to rename them as well. So importing from memory card is a little bit more involved, but the same methodology applies if you've already got pictures on your computer. So card goes into card reader. It's not the fastest card reader in the world, but we won't be hanging around for ages. And now we can see the contents of our memory card. Why are you bouncing, Capture One? Thank you. Now I've split up, I've got two weddings from Eric basically. Now typically Eric is not going to shoot a wedding, wait till the next wedding, and then import both weddings at the same time. Unlikely that's going to happen unless it's a crazy busy weekend and he needs to shoot two weddings. The reason why I've done that is purely for demonstration purposes, because the date is different on each of these sets of pictures. Because I want to show you a method of automatically putting pictures into folders based on their date. So that's the only reason why we've got two differences. What we're going to do is run through those, but before we do that, we might actually like to decide which pictures I want to import. Let's say you've shot a large quantity and you feel that, okay, I don't need to import everything because I know there's some duds. Then now's a good time to actually do that. Right now, you see the default size of the thumbnail is relatively small. Let's actually make me a bit smaller so we're not hiding the interface. And up here in the top right hand corner, we could actually make our thumbnails a little bigger, but it's still depending on the size of monitor you're looking at. Now I'm broadcasting from a 14-inch MacBook Pro. So the screen isn't enormous. If you're on a 32-inch 4K screen, you're going to see a lot more pictures. It won't necessarily be that easy to make some judgments on, are people's eyes open? Is it in focus? Is the exposure completely off the charts or whatever? So hidden up here in the top left-hand corner is something called Viewer. And what this does is enable Capture One to use the preview that's already present inside the raw file, which the manufacturers write in there, which is basically what you're seeing on the back of the camera. So on the LCD display, the camera isn't having to decode the raw file all the time. It's just quickly throwing you up a preview there. So if we tap on that, we get a much larger view of the picture, which is much easier to judge whether you would like to keep the picture or import it rather, or reject it. Now the benefit of this is performance as well. This is super fast. So if I do this, so if I hold on to my right cursor key, so I'm going to hide this view in a minute so you can see. If I just tap on my right cursor key, we're going to scroll through the pictures. Helps if Capture One is actually in focus, like so. So now by tapping on my cursor key, I can move very quickly backwards and forwards. If I just hold down this cursor key, you can see how quickly I can move through the pictures. So it's really nice and fast. You don't have to wait for any preview to build because it's built. It's quick already. Now you've got two choices in terms of how it's best to describe this. Do you want to decide what to import, or do you want to decide what to reject? Okay, so currently by default you'll see that nothing is picked for import. Okay, so if I said import now, I can't because it's grayed out because I haven't chosen anything. So two choices. You could either go through and select the ones that you want to import, or we could pick all with this button down here, or checkbox I should say, and then decide which ones don't make the cut. Now, whether you do version A or version B is entirely up to you. So depending if you just want to pick a few out of a collection or you just want to get rid of the crappy ones, either way, this method works. So what we can do now is we can use our cursor key, which moves through the pictures back and forth. And if we want to reject something down here, under keyboard shortcuts, you can see the shortcuts. Spacebar toggle or pick S, unpick A. I find using the spacebar, so just tapping a spacebar, is the easiest thing to do. So if we come back and look at this view, so we're on this picture right here, and we're always locking our currently selected picture to the middle one, and there's a reason for that. But if I decide, okay, this one's a bit of a duff shot because I've already got quite a few which work better, so I'm going to tap my spacebar, and that now gets unchecked. So now I can move through nice and quickly and just, no insult to Eric, these are all good, but you probably don't want me to import 143 pictures. So let's just take out some of these. Now the reason why this one is always in the middle is because in a sequence like we've got here, we've got 1, 2, 3 pictures which are quite similar. So very easily I can go back and forth and think, well, actually out of these ones, I prefer that one. So I'm just going to leave that one checked. Same for here. We've got, you know, these two, but I like both of those. And then any sequence, we've got a sequence of these 3 here. There's no point probably having all 3 of them. So let's just have one of them. You get the idea. So we can move through nice and quickly. So I'm just going to uncheck some of these. Like we've got 4 or 5 which are pretty similar here. So out of all of these, I'd probably like one where we can see them laughing. So I'm going to take away that one, keep that one, get rid of that one, get rid of that one, and so on. So let me just blitz a few more so we don't have too many similarities, and then we're going to import those checked ones, like same for this sequence as well. I might only want one of those. Take that one away, this one, and we'd get rid of some of those. As I said, if you prefer to start with none of them checked and then get rid of or tag the ones that you do want for import, then that's, you know, equally a good strategy as well. So there we go. I'm at the end of my collection. You'll see again, speed-wise, we can zoom through the pictures like so. So we've now got 98 of 143 picked at the top here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, RAW plus JPEG pairs. That was a question which I just saw pop up over there. So we will cover that when we come to the naming. Okay. Very cool. I've never used the viewer, says Jeff. No, it's a little bit hidden. We're actually going to make a change up here. I can probably say that, which will help new customers, or actually existing who haven't discovered it, discover it a little bit better. So we'll make the icon a bit larger, change the name a bit, put a help bubble there so people can actually discover it because it's super, super speedy. Right, so first of all, now we need to decide where we want to import to. I'm not bothering to check exclude duplicates because we're going into a brand new empty catalog, so there's no duplicates in there. But if I had shot some photos on a card, imported them, put my card back in my camera, shot some more, then excluding duplicates would make sense because we don't want to double up. So where do we want to do with these pictures? Do we want to add them to the catalog? No, we do not, because it says your files will stay where they are. We do not want them to stay on the memory card. We want to put them somewhere safe. So let's choose copy to folder. So again, this is about setting it up for success in the future. So you only have to do this once, or we're not having to change the same parameters over and over again because that's inefficient. So I'm going to make a new folder in my pictures folder, and this is exactly how I do it at home. The only difference being is that I store my pictures on an external hard drive, which is currently ejected, just purely for space reasons. But I have a folder at the top level of this hard drive, and the only thing this hard drive contains is pictures, called My Photo Collection. So everything goes in there after the fact. So let's create that. And we're going to set that as the import folder. Now all the subfolders which we're going to make are going to be done part automatically. So whenever I come to import again, I'm only worried about changing the subfolder because it's always going to go in my photo collection. So under here we've got subfolder. Currently we've got no subfolder defined. So there's a little button here with 3 dots. That's going to open up our dialog to choose my subfolder. What this is going to do, oh, that's what we did this morning, so spoiler alert. What this does is open you, if you like, a naming format window here to build our, subfolder format, not our naming format, which we can do by just manually typing in a folder name. Like if I just typed in wedding, Capture One would make a wedding folder for me. Or we can use a combination of typing in and also these tokens down here. And you'll see tokens featured throughout this webinar series. And what a token does is just extract some kind of metadata from the image, like the day it was captured, the camera that was used, the serial number. There's 60 odd different options there. You name it, it's probably a token. Or to something environmental like today's date, or the date that the picture was taken, or the time that the picture was taken. So what we're going to do is use a combination, okay? So I'm going to start by making a folder called Wedding Couples. Then if I put a slash in there, /, I know it's hard to see, but it is there. I'm then going to put the couple's name. So let's put Jesse and Cav, like so. And then another /. So each time we put a / in, we're dropping down a level on the folder tree. And now I'm going to use a token. And we're going to filter these just to show date and time tokens. And we're going to use image date and drag that up. Now, by default, the date is January 28th, 2022, or it's month, day, year. If you prefer something else, like year, month, day, you can do that. If you prefer something altogether different that isn't available here, you've also got separate tokens for day of the month and the year. So if you want to have a different combination of how those look, you can do so. So now these pictures are going to go into a folder based on the date they were shot, into a folder called Jesse and Cav, the name of the couple, and into a master folder called Wedding Couples, like so. So let's say OK to that. And finally, collection-wise, by default, everything goes into a fixed collection called Recent Imports Only, or if you're using a session, by default, it will go to the session folder or the capture folder, whatever you've set as your pref. But we're going to say the selected album. So we can't see it, it's just hiding behind here. Jesse and Cav wedding, like so. So we're going to do quite a bit already. They're going to be popped into that folder based in a folder on the date that they were captured, and they're also going to get dropped into that collection as well. Yes, Kieran, a recording is available. And JD, can you sync a metadata preset with a session template? No, you cannot. Actually, no, it doesn't work. Sorry. So you'll have to choose your session template, and in the import dialog, you would pick your import metadata preset. But it is sticky, as you'll see. But if you're using more than one metadata preset, then you'd have to manually make sure you would pick the right one. But you can't sync that up, so no, sorry. Let's check over here. N, we will come to your question in a second, and Jean as well. How to apply metadata preset to an already collection created. Very simple. Still no option to import by moving, not copying from one folder to another folder. Well, Arthur, sorry. Generally no, because there's not many situations where you would want to move. I would say, I can see why you want to do it, but hopefully if you have the most efficient import process, then you won't need to. So quite often, you know, we hear someone say, well, I just dump stuff on my desktop and then I import it. We are kind of doing the same process twice. So just import it into the right location first of all, if you can, obviously. And check in one last question. sorry for my brain fart there. I was just reading a rather long question. I think, Abbott, your question will be answered, hopefully, but just give me a nudge if it's not. And Aldo, that's probably a little bit of scope outside of this webinar, but feel free to hit us up on social media to ask. Okay. Marty says, if you create a folder year, month, day, and then you want to create the same one with a different wedding, where's the date? If the date is the same, does it overwrite or add? It doesn't overwrite, it just adds. So if you do have the same dates, if you're a very busy wedding photographer and you have 2 weddings on the same day, it won't overwrite if that folder already exists or blitz anything else. Okay, right, so moving on before we run out of time, let's just check naming. Now the goal of naming is of course to make unique names. I had an unfortunate situation that using 2 different Sony camera models, this one you're looking at me on is an RX100, I also have a Sony A7, and of course same manufacturer, same kind of naming convention. So at some point I had a naming clash and couldn't figure out why when I was exporting from a catalog to a cloud service, some stuff was getting overwritten. So since then I've made sure to have unique names. So what we're going to do is, now this is just my naming convention, you don't have to follow it, but works for me. So again, using tokens, we're going to use the token called job name, so we can punch in a job name here. So we need to find our token beginning with J, or you can actually start typing it up here. And so I want the job name, I want the image date as well, because this is a good way of ensuring that your file naming is unique. And I'm going to have year, month, day, and we would also need a counter as well. So I have seen a couple of issues where people have forgotten to give a counter and all their pictures have the same name just appended with 1, 2, 3, 4 after it. So you do need to have a counter as well if you don't want to get in a mess. So let's make this 4 digits, and so it's not all smushed together, we're going to put in between there a hyphen like so. Now, so you don't have to do this each time, you should save that as a preset. So I'm going to say save custom preset, and we call this basic import naming, like so. So if you ever need to recall it, you can grab basic import naming and then it will just load up those tokens and the text you've got and so on. Of course, if you want to import with different naming presets, like if you have different clients, different purposes, then you can save a lot of those naming presets. And let's say okay. And we obviously need to give this a name, so let's call this Jesse Cav. Actually, I'm going to spell Jesse's name wrong for a reason in a second. Okay, so we've got Jesse Cav like so. Okay, metadata and copyright. We're going to leave that blank because what we're going to do down here under adjustments is pick our custom preset, which was Eric's basic metadata. And why not? Let's also chuck in a style as well. So let's just add a basic style too, so that we've got our baseline adjustments set. And if we wanted to, we could also tag auto adjust with that as well. I won't bother for this case, but that's also another little step that you can do as well. Now, someone asked about erasing in the webinar room. We can eject card after the import is done, fine. And you can say erase images after copying. I'm way too chicken for that. So I would want to make sure that everything has copied over, the cat hasn't tripped over the card reader and disconnected it halfway through. I'd want to make sure the backup had kicked in and so on. So I personally don't tick those boxes, but you can if you like. Can't understand that job name tag. There are many jobs. Yeah, exactly, but it's dynamic. So job name refers to this. So let's say we've done this import, we come back, we do another job, and then we call, okay, I did a job for Mercedes, so I'll punch this in here, like so. I'll come back to this import window once we've done that import to show you the stickiness of everything. So I'm just going to spell her name wrong for a reason. Okay, so in summary, we've decided which ones we want to pick. we're importing to our master folder, but Capture One's going to build us 3 subfolders. So wedding couples, Jesse, and the date that they were shot. It's going to put them into our selected collection. We could back up if you wanted to. I'm not going to do it in this case. And we've got our naming convention, which ensures our naming is unique. So we've got our job name, the date it was shot, and a counter. We've added our basic metadata, which is here, and we've also thrown in a style as well. You may well have your own style, your kind of base adjustments, so it gets that out the way as well. We could auto adjust too if you wanted, and we're not going to erase images after copying because we're smart and we wouldn't do that. And now we're going to say import 98 images. Before I do that, I just check there isn't any questions. Daniela says, how much memory of the internal ROM will each catalog take? I have 2 terabytes of photos. That's pretty good. The catalog, it depends on how many pictures really. So the catalog will grow in size. So it's very hard to say, to be honest. But the catalog, if you're worried about storage, you don't have to store the catalog file, which is like your LRCat. So in Capture One, it is, I'll show you, it is this guy. Capture One, webinar import PM, you see it's only 193 kilobytes at the moment because we haven't imported anything. That will grow as we import pictures into it. William, can I import pictures into a master catalog? Yes, you can, William. You can just say file import session up in Capture One, file import session, and you can do that. So yes, you can have a master catalog to view all your sessions. If you look on our blog, learn.captureone.com, and just search for that, you should actually find something. Can you change the time that an image was shot in the metadata? You can't currently, but it's a popular request, if you get my drift. Can you use the job name token for the import folder as well? Pretty sure you cannot. Let's have a look. HI, job identifier. No, job identifier picks up from metadata, but you can't use job name there. But it's not a bad idea, actually, Leslie. Okay, I think, Ian, you have predicted the future, so we will remember your question and come back to that. And finally, yeah, same question from Arthur as well. I'd like to be able to edit time and date and so on. We hear you. What are the auto adjustments, Matthew says? I'll show you in a second, but it's like exposure, contrast, HDR, but you can decide what you want. So we have a look where that is. Helen has predicted the future too. Can you go back and rename if you screwed it up? Yes, we can. Oh, and with regards to JPEG and RAW pairing, if we look here, we've got pair RAWs and JPEG. So if you've got RAW and JPEG and you want each shot to have the same name, make sure that's ticked on. If you want to hide your JPEGs, make sure global filters is set like this. Global filters applies over the whole of the ecosystem. So it will hide in the import, it will hide in Capture One, it will hide everywhere. So if you think, where the hell are my JPEGs? You've probably got global filters turned on. So as I said, in summary, we've decided what we want, we're putting them in folders, we are adding to a collection, we're renaming them on import, we're adding some metadata and a style, and we're not erasing. So let's go ahead and say import like so. So these pictures are starting to come in. You can see over here this collection is filling up nicely. The first progress bar we've got here is the physical copying of A to B from the card to the destination on my hard drive, and underneath is the preview generation. What preview generation is essentially when we're looking at a picture in Capture One, we don't have to decode the raw file until you zoom in past a certain level, in this case 100%. You do not have to wait for this to finish. So once the physical copying of data has completed, which we'll let it complete, you can start working. So we can start browsing through Capture One nice and quickly. If I pick a picture which has yet to have a preview built for it like this one, Capture One will now prioritize building this one. So you can forget about this activity window. Just close it and forget it actually exists, because it does not prevent you from going ahead and doing your work. So it is purely a background task. You'll know when it's done because this little wheel will stop spinning, or you can tap it. But there we go, that's 100 previews built in a pretty speedy time as well. So if we look at our folders tool, which shows us the exact location of our pictures, and if we compare that to our Finder, which is right here. So you see my photo collection, wedding couples, Jesse and Cav. And if you remember, just for demo purposes, I put in some older pictures, and it also means we can show you renaming. So that they're split up into two different folders, like so. So we've got here and here, like so. Okay, now we also added a style. So you can see this style is present. So the sliders will have some adjustments to them, as you can see. We also added Eric basic metadata. So any image that we look at, you will see has our basic metadata like so. What else did we do? The renaming we talked about, did our preset, did our style, put them into a collection, made sure they're in an intelligent place. So all of that coped with in the import window. Now, if you were to return to the import window, so let's go back into it, everything is sticky. So we've got our same basic metadata and our style. We've got our naming convention already set up. What I would do is just pick a different name. So if we went on holiday to the Seychelles, which would be nice, then I could just switch the job name here, and the rest of my naming conventions just going to work great. With numbering, which was a question over in the webinar room, we can then say reset the import counter, because right now we're at 99, because that's how many pictures we last left off at. So we want to reset that import counter, and we're back to 1. If you care about that. Personally, I just tend to let it roll sometimes. I'm less worried about the number. I'm more concerned about the naming convention being unique. So that's the most important thing. But otherwise, everything else here is sticky. So next time you come to import, change your job name, change the path or the format for where you want stuff to go, and you can hit import. So is there a limit to the number of tokens to be used when naming? I don't know. There isn't physically in Capture One. The only thing that you might need to be aware of is there a limit on file names in OS X or Windows? How many characters can you have? I can't tell you that. I'm sorry. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let's see. Auto adjustments we need to tell you, Matthew. And that's about it, I think. Where should the catalogue reside? Lewis was saying. By the way, webinar people, put your questions in the Q&A tab. It's easier to find them then. The catalogue, where should it reside? You know, in the olden days, I would say the best place to put it is on your internal hard drive, where you've got the fastest storage, if you like, and it doesn't matter where your images are so much. To be honest, now with Thunderbolt 4 connections, SSD drives, stick it where you like. To be honest, it doesn't matter really too much in terms of performance. If you were being super pedantic, you would say, again, Catalogue on the workstation that you're using. Images, doesn't matter. But I can read a catalogue off a Samsung T5 drive with identical performance if it's sitting on the internal drive. So it really doesn't matter so much anymore. So to the questions regarding renaming, what happens if you've screwed it up? Because we're only human, we could of course mess it up, and we have messed it up because this is not Jesse and Cav. So let's actually fix the naming on this particular set. So I'm going to select all those pictures, and we're going to right click, and we're going to say batch rename. It's also somewhere up here, I think, image, batch rename images. but it's the same thing. So we're going to say batch rename. You'll get a warning saying that your pictures names are going to be changed on disk. Fair enough. So we're going to say continue. And we've got two choices. We can, oh, another spoiler alert there, we can find and replace. So if we don't want to change anything else, like our numbering is fine, to be honest. The only thing we've messed up is that we've potentially spelt Jesse's name wrong. In this case, it's not Jesse and Cav, so we need to fix that. So we've got two choices. We can find and replace, or we can use text and tokens. So we could completely rename it using one of my presets, and we can get to our presets here. So basic import naming, like so, and we could rebuild that, or we could say find and replace. But for this one, let's do text and tokens. So this is going to be Banjo Pool, and we want to reset the rename counter. So we're back to 0. Job name is Banjo Pool, and then we could go ahead and rename. Why is that blanked out? That's strange. Let's try that again. Continue. There we go. That's a strange one. Text and tokens, and let's say rename. That's fine. Proceed. So now we've renamed these pictures to, as you can see, Banjo and Pool, like so. So using that same preset that we had earlier, which is nice. And then for Jessie and Cav here, because I've spelt her name wrong, bad photographer. Let's select all of those, right click, batch rename. And this time we're going to do find and replace. So I'm going to say find Jessie. How many S's did I put? 2, 3, 4. Like so. Cav or whatever, and replace with Jessie and Cav. Like so. So that's just going to take that chunk out of the name and replace it with the correct naming. So now I can say rename, and Capture One will go ahead and do that nice and quickly as well. That's actually got a lot faster in the past few releases. Batch renaming used to be a bit embarrassingly slow. Now it's way, way, way quicker. So that's nice that that's fixed. So if you do mess it up, then it's easy to fix. Lee says, yes, that explains why 2 different years for the same wedding. Lee, you must have missed that bit. It was purely for demonstration purposes, so we could show it in 2 different folders. Okay, oh, William, there is no Q&A tab for YouTube and Facebook. Just throw them in the chat. We're also broadcasting into a webinar, which does have a Q&A tab. So that was my little grumpy rant about that. Okay, now that's just an example of using a token. There are loads of different tokens. So if you have a different naming convention, or you want to divide up stuff by camera serial number, let's say you're using 2 cameras and you want to split them up into 2 different cameras, like if it's you and a colleague shooting or whatever, you can do so. Or if you're using 2 different cameras yourself and you want to divide them up, you can do that. So as I said, there's date tokens. You could divide by lenses if you wanted to. So the sky's the limit really, but date is kind of a typical one. Okay, so let's just check my notes. We did that. There was a question earlier about, what was it? We did the batch rename. Gah, getting old, mine's gone blank. I can't remember what the question was, but it'll come to me, I'm sure, but it was something that I was supposed to go back to. Couple of things in terms of filtering, as we've got a few minutes left. There was a question just this morning about filtering and a few other, how do I, select a bunch of pictures? Can I search for a particular file name? Which I thought gelled quite nicely with what we were trying to do here. So there is a couple of different ways of searching. If you just want to search for one photo, then you can do so up here in the top right. So if I tap on, nope, I don't want dictation. If I tap on this one, I could search, well, let's just punch in 45 and then that's going to find me any picture which has, should do, why aren't you behaving? Let's try that again, 0044 or whatever, enter. So there we go. So now we've got picture number 44. If I tap in 45, it just filters to that. Of course, if I did something like 28 or whatever, then we might end up with issues because it's going to pull out anything which has 28 in the name, for example, 28. So that will search really any aspect of the file name. Now, if someone's come back and given you a huge, list of various different pictures that they'd like you to see, let's just look at these in the Finder. Then you've got, a different way or a much more powerful way to solve that. So let's just copy the file name of this one. And then what we're going to do is say select by file name list. This is a little known feature which is really handy if you're given a piece of paper with, oh, I'd love number 10, 8, 12, 14, 16, 132 and so on. Then you've got to go through and find all those pictures, which is super annoying. So if we say select by file name list, we can paste in, especially if you've got a text document. Let's just pick a few different ones. Copy in here. Let's just grab one of these over here, copy that. It doesn't matter how long the list is, performance is still pretty identical. So let's just grab these 4 pictures. So your client or couple or whatever has come back and said, we'd love these shots. Now it's annoying to have to trawl through all of those. So I've just copied 4 file names on a new line. That's why we have delimiter, because I can separate them by comma, semicolon or space, but new line is convenient here. And if they had .jpeg on the end of them, if they'd come from like small proofs that you've sent, then we could ignore the file extension. So it doesn't matter if they're raw files or JPEGs in your catalog or whatever. So now as soon as I say OK, Capture One selects those pictures instantly. So it's super fast. And then before you lose your selection, so you don't have to do it again, right click on any of them in the browser. And we're going to say create albums from the selection. Now you can also create albums, as you can see, by rating, color tag, sequence ID, which is related to phase 1 cameras only, or the current selection. So I'm going to say selection, and we're just going to call that selects. We want to select this collection after it's created, and we want to add the selected images to it. Why you wouldn't add the selected images, I don't know, but as soon as we say OK, we've been moved to a different collection, and then we've got our 4 pictures in it like so. So that's really handy. Or to be honest, probably an easier way to do that is don't forget you've got Capture One Live at your disposal. So if you would like to share a collection of pictures with clients, couples, friends, peers, whatever, then rather than generating JPEGs, sending them JPEGs, getting a list like that back, you can of course just share with Capture One Live. So very quickly, if I tap on the Live button, I'm going to share the Selects collection. It's just 4 pictures. I'm going to start sharing that. Capture One will upload those. If we grab this link, let's just go to Safari, which is not running. Paste that link in, and now I've got a lovely client gallery, which I can add star ratings to, I can add color tags to, and of course the beauty is, if you've not been exposed to Capture One Live, is that these sync back directly with Capture One. So now we've got those star ratings. So if I obliterate that star rating or just add it to 1, then let's go back to the gallery. This is now down to 1. Let's make it 5. Almost instantly it syncs back again. Now you don't have to be on the same network. Capture One doesn't have to be running. It works beautifully for collaboration like so. So while select by file name list is really handy and very powerful, don't forget you can do that as well. Auto adjust, that was it, Rami. Thank you. Savior from my memory. What's in auto adjust? If we had done that on import. Up here, if you click once, this is what you can decide is part of that auto adjust mechanism. So obviously if you're not shooting stuff which requires keystone, don't have that. Rotation will do the automatic AI rotate, which is very handy. And then you can pick and choose what else you want in that. If you're confident your camera is auto white balance nicely, then I would take that one off. But I'd be tempted to leave all those other ones on. Because if I say auto now with these 4, then Capture One's going to go ahead and do its business like so. So it can save you a lot of time just to get those basic adjustments down pat. In terms of filtering, just very quickly, if you didn't realize, so we're now back in this big collection, 98 shots. The numbers here, they relate to the currently selected collection or folder or whatever. So you see in the selects collection, 2 are 5 stars, 1 is 3 star, 1 is 1 star. If I go to my initial collection here, we can see that 1 is orange, 97 have no tag. If we just make a couple of these different tags for whatever reason, then you'll see these number count changes as well. So if I wanted to filter by blue, then I could tap that and then I would only see my blue pictures, clear it by pressing once more. We could do a whole webinar on filtering, to be honest. So maybe that's another efficiency subject. The last thing about filtering is that you can also convert, because Daniela was asking about those earlier. You can convert your filters into a smart album. So let's say I am going through, and let's just bring this up. I use these 3 keys, 7, 8, and 9 for, so let's just bring up a picture you can see. So that one there, I use 7, 8, and 9 for green, yellow, red, because it's easy to touch on the keyboard. And then 6 clears the color tag like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for star ratings. So it's really quick and easy to apply a star rating. Thumb rests here on the cursor key, then we can go through and then we can tag to or reject to our heart's content. Now by default, Capture One isn't set up to have 7, 8, and 9 and 6 for color tags. So what you need to do is go into Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, and just search for green as an example, and you can see my adjustment color tag is set to 7. So I find that, you know, a nicer way to work in terms of color tagging. Now, Daniela, what we were saying earlier was that now I've got, you know, 3 shots that are green tagged. There's tiny, tiny, tiny little 3 orange dots here, which I'd be dead impressed if you self-discovered this, is if we click on that, we can actually convert our filters to a smart album. So it could be a combination of filters. So if I hold down my command key, then I can combine the photo must have 5 stars and be green. And that's only this picture, green and 5 stars, as you can see. If we want to convert that to a smart album, I can tap this and you can see the active filters, a color tag is green, rating equals 5. So I can then say, make this a smart album, please. And then we can say green tag 5 star and say save. Now anything which satisfies that criteria will automatically plop into that folder. So if we just go to another picture, let's clear my filters with the X. Let's make this one green and 5, and now it's in the same folder like so. So a bit of a little sidestep from importing, but it's kind of something you do after import anyway. But as I said, we could probably do a whole session on that. So let's wrap up with a few questions. Juan Carlos says, I started using Capture One Live and it's great. It's becoming part of my normal workflow. Excellent. Do give it a try. You get 5 free sessions by default, and if you feel that you want to use it, then you can subscribe. Just go into your account online, find your license key, and then you can subscribe up to Capture One Live there. Okay, let's knock off a few questions. Daniela, what you should watch is if I shot birds, butterflies and frogs. Thank you very much. I would watch a former or an older webinar. See if I can find it for you. If you go to learn.capture1.com and let's see, so learn.capture1.com, if you type in catalogs and say search, and whoops, helps if you don't delete the search term, David, catalogs, and we look for, oh, first of all, someone was asking about, that was William. So William, if you read this, it's a really old blog post, but it's still relevant, about combining sessions into a catalogue. So you see it's from 2015, so it's a bit of an old one. If you would go to, let's just go back to Learn for a second. Whoops. Learn.capture1.com. Look at webinars, filter to webinars and scroll down a bit, and then you should find, says he, so there's working with sessions, if you want to know all about sessions, and then master catalog organization. So Daniela, if you look at that, then that will solve your very specific question about dividing up, because that gets into talking about albums, smart albums, projects, groups, how all of those different mechanisms work as well. And then you'll be able to organize very, very nicely. Okay, let's looky over here and have a look. A webinar on filtering and ranking, God, nearly said something else then, would be great. Windows 10, the max file name length, including the folder path, is 30,000 characters. So hopefully none of you have a naming convention which is 30,000 characters, but it's safe to say that you should be fine. Does importing to a session also allow collections and the structure you set up for catalogs? Sessions are a bit different in terms of user collections. So you can have albums and smart albums, but you don't have the deeper management of projects and groups. Sessions really are only designed for one job. So you go out on location and you shoot a job. You shoot in the studio the next day and so on. So each job has an individual session. So they're not designed to have those deeper, more complex organizational capabilities. Whereas a catalog is designed to have a broad overview of lots of jobs, work, and so on, which is why they have those deeper organizational capabilities. But sessions are not designed to do that. So trying to use one session as a way to store all your pictures is probably not the most efficient way to do it. William says, I have hundreds of sessions. I'd love a way to point Capture One at a drive and import all of them. You could do that, to be honest. All you would do is, let's say you've got a folder with all my sessions, point the importer to all my sessions, and then just say include subfolders, and make sure you've got include existing adjustments, and Capture One will pull everything in and also include the adjustments. So you can do it in one hit as well, William. Is it possible to save import presets to be able to transfer to another computer and not have to set up all over again? You know what, the import presets, unfortunately, you can't. There's not a way to find those, at least I don't think there is. Let's just have a quick sneaky look, but I'm pretty sure they are kind of embedded into the application. No, you cannot, I'm afraid. Which is a shame, really, because it would be nice to normalize. So that's one for the feature request bank, but it's not possible currently. Okay, so I will pick two more questions because then we're running out of time. And again, you know, we're always around on social media at support.capture1.com. So if I didn't get to your question, you can always reach out for help there, okay? Oh yeah, can I go back and apply this to thousands of disorganized imports? Yes. In terms of applying your metadata preset, it's easy. So all you need to do, so you go to the, let's just take these 4 pictures and I'm going to reset the metadata. So we've got rid of the metadata on these 4 pictures, okay? So completely blank. All you need to do is select them and then choose your metadata preset. You'll actually see a preview pop up and click once, and that's it. So now metadata is nicely applied to those 4 pictures. So you could go to the all images collection, select all, go here and add your metadata preset, and then you could back metadata all your pictures. And as I said, when we come to export, you can decide how much metadata you want included. So don't be afraid about putting too much in the import stage, because we can always leave it out at the export stage. Are auto adjustments excluded from before and after view? No, definitely not. So before and after, you can see what's going on. The only thing that's excluded is like shape-based adjustments, so keystone, rotation, that kind of stuff, because it would be annoying to see the after at a different rotation. That wouldn't make sense. So that's what's removed. But no, auto adjustments are still included. All auto is doing is moving the sliders around. So if I reset this and say auto, so again, reset 0 and say auto. So it's not doing anything hidden or masked or anything like that. Last question, Carlos. Is it possible to move images that have already been copied into the catalogue and move them to an external location with the import tokens? You could move them. So let's say we wanted to move these pictures to an external location. What I would have to do is add my external location right here. So let's go to an external hard drive and let's just call this Banjo Pool and say create, and then I can add that. See, it now appears down here, and then I would move these pictures to that location, and I'll actually get a warning saying move. So now these pictures have been moved to that external location. If I wanted to then fix the naming, I could right click and say batch rename, pick my naming preset, basic import naming, and then rename them. So yes, you could move them. Yes, you could rename them using batch rename. Yes, you could add your metadata by doing what we saw just a couple of minutes ago. So yeah, you could do that. There would just be a few steps, that's all. You can use tokens for file name. Can you use a token in another metadata field like the image creation date year for copyright? Yeah, pretty much all of those metadata fields have a corresponding token. So if the metadata field exists, then there is a token for that. Bryce says, I create a new session every time I go out and shoot. I don't know if it's a good idea because I have so much sessions. It's exactly what I do, and I also have a master catalogue of all my sessions. So again, that blog post, if you have a read of that, that talks about that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, because I am not, so skilled that when I shoot a bunch of pictures, I want to keep all of them. So I import them into a session, I mess around, I do some basic rating and adjustment and that kind of stuff on my little laptop, which is over there. And then I transfer it to my big laptop with the external hard drives and so on. What will be good for me when it comes is the iPad, Capture One for iPad, because what I'm simply going to do is do that first stage on my iPad, the basic culling and so on, and then dump those over the cloud onto for my desktop. So that's going to replace that workflow for me, which is good. Okay, I'm afraid we are out of time. So as I said, hit us up on social media if you have a question. Sorry if we didn't get to all of them. I was flying solo today, so it's not quite as easy to answer all the questions from 3 different locations. So bear with me on that one. Diego will be back in a couple of weeks, and then there'll be 2 of us again working on these. So thanks for your patience. Hope you found that interesting. Join us again for the next one, which is about editing, where we look at using speed edit, styles, whole bunch of other stuff to speed that part up. Thanks again all, and see you soon. Bye now.